hello from the car. I'm kind of in between errands right now. I have some time to kill, so I figured I do a video in between. I hope this works because the Osmo Pocket was like not turning on at all. I kept getting stuck on the logo, on the DJI logo. Put a new SD card and like force reset it, so it's all right. So I hope this doesn't crap out. Also, the framing is interesting, so we'll see. But anyway, as you can see, it snowed. I freaking hate snow, gang. I feel like the older I get, as time goes on, I'm just like, the snow is just a pain in the ass. I know there's people who love it. They go skiing and shit, but like, I don't know. It's not for me. I like it, I like fall weather, where it's nice out, but it's like a little chilly. I prefer that. Anyway, today I want to talk about when you should remove features from your app. And I'm going to be kind of looking at some notes here. But so basically the main idea here is that sometimes it's better to remove features from your app instead of adding features to your app. Because if you think about it, like when you're working on software, you're always thinking about what's the next thing I'm going to do and what's the next thing I'm going to add. And that's what customers ask for too. Like customers, it's pretty rare you would get a customer request saying, please remove this feature, right? Like they're usually asking for more things, additional things. So what happens is over time, you're adding more and more and more. And then sometimes you got to get rid of stuff. And there's a couple reasons why you would do that. But yeah, let's talk about that. And if you don't know, my name's Sean. I'm an iOS developer. I'm a designer developer. I work on an app called Sofa, which helps you to be more intentional with your downtime. And you can get that in the App Store if you want. Check it out. But essentially, if you think about like removing stuff or just like adding features, but like this idea that more is better. And I know like there's so many overlaps and stuff like that with like minimalism and reducing the amount of things you have and reducing the number of choices you have. But when you are someone who is making a product like software specifically, where you can add new features, like it's so different from a hardware feature where you have to kind of make a whole new product to do that. But with software, you can add stuff all the time if you want. And again, when you're getting requests for that from people, always for something new, and you're looking to add more value, especially if you're selling something and charging people money, you want to add more value to that stuff, right? So there's this kind of delicate balance between adding new things, new functionality, new features, and taking stuff away that maybe doesn't make sense anymore, that kind of stuff. And the thing that really triggered this was I'm working on, I'm adding a very large new feature to Sofa, the ability to play podcasts. So I'm essentially building a podcast player into Sofa, which is a very, very large new feature. It's going well, still in beta right now, but there was like this mini feature within the podcast player that I removed recently because it initially made sense. Like when I thought about it, I'll go into more details later. But then as I was building stuff and as I was using it and getting feedback, like it was actually kind of confusing. And it revealed a lot of weird edge cases where I would have to build in all these kind of like defensive features to make that feature work. So I decided to just get rid of it, right? And it's in the beta, so you can say like, well, I never shipped it anyway, but like there's beta testers using it. So, but that's what like kind of triggered this thought of, hey, it's good to remove features sometimes, and that can actually make the product better in the short and long term. So, but first, let's get into some reasons why you would actually remove a feature. Why would you do this? And there's I have it like broken down into 3 things. So the first one is that like a feature isn't working as expected. So this could be, it's kind of like you think you have this great idea for a feature, and you think you understand the problem, and you go, okay, here's how I'm going to do it, and then you execute on it, you put it out there, and then people don't use it, they're not aware of it, they don't like it, they find it confusing, any number of reasons why it would not be used. And this can happen all the time. This can happen for like big features, right? Or for small features. And even like I'm going through this now with the podcast player. So I'm adding a podcast player into Sofa, and I think I have good reasons why. Like I've made videos about that. You can watch those. I could turn out to be wrong, right? Like this could be something where it's like, that was a bad decision, right? So, there's times where you just kind of like make your best, you make it your best informed decision, and then move forward and build something, and then you go from there. But like, okay, so let's say you're a feature that you built that's out there, it's not working as expected. You're not getting the results you expected. People aren't using it, whatever. Maybe you're just getting like kind of bad feedback from it too. And that can be like so many reasons why. Like maybe you didn't understand the problem well enough. And maybe it wasn't even the right problem to solve. Like there's so many, this can get like pretty deep and meta, but essentially, you have to figure out like, is this actually a problem to solve or the right problem to solve for whatever you're trying to do? And then there's so many different solutions you can do within there. Like, and I don't think it's pretty rare that there's times where there's the right solution. I think there's just like one of many solutions you can do for any number of problems. And you can get stuff wrong all along that kind of spectrum there. And if you get one of those things wrong or a collection of those things wrong, that can make that kind of final experience just like not very good. And that stuff kind of happens. But I would say like when that stuff happens, it's like you either have to fix it. So, maybe it's a small fix, maybe whatever, but you have to like figure out like, what did you not understand about the initial problem, and then go fix it. Or the other option is to just remove the feature, right? Like just like kind of cut your losses. It's all good. And just get rid of it. So another reason is that something is broken. That happens where, you ship something, it's broken, and not broken as in like there's bugs, but broken as in, the kind of fundamental solution that you created technically from a design perspective, whatever, is just broken, right? It just doesn't work, and is causing a lot of problems. So that's another area where like, you have to fix it fast and get rid of it very fast. I'm going to go through examples of this stuff too, that I experienced. This last one is, the evolution of the product. And I think this one's actually more interesting and probably more applicable, to be honest with you, because I've been working on Sofa since 2015. But since 2017 is when I took over, sold development and everything like that. And, decisions you make 5 years ago, they may not hold up 5 years later, right? As you're learning more about the product and learning more about the people who use it and the problems that they have and the problems that they're trying to solve with different things. And you run into situations where, okay, there's this new problem that I want to solve and I have a good solution for it, but that doesn't really work with a decision I made 5 years ago. And you run into these situations where you kind of have like these forks in the road where you need to either kill the old thing or not do the new thing. And, there's so many ways that can go, pros and cons to all those things. But it's just an interesting part of creating, maintaining, and continuing to like work on a product over multiple years. And it's something that when you're first starting, you're not really thinking about, because everything's new and you're just kind of like, building new stuff, no big deal. But there's a good chance if you do this long enough that you're going to run into situations where a decision that you made 5 years ago was a good decision at the time. It's just that the product has evolved, or you have evolved, or the customer base has evolved, and maybe you want to take the product in a new direction or just a different direction or whatever. All that's totally fine, but that can lead to you having to kill features that really no longer make sense. And I would say that that's good for the product, because just having stuff kind of linger there for a long time just because it was there 5 years ago or whatever, that can cause a lot of problems for you in terms of like developing the thing. Like maybe it slows you down, it's getting in the way, whatever. And just from like the customer experience, maybe it's just, it can add confusion. It can just get in the way of whatever you're trying to do. So I'm sure there's more ways why, or more reasons why you want to remove stuff, but like these are the three that I kept thinking about, where something isn't working or something is like broken, and then the product has evolved in some way that it no longer makes sense. But I want to go through a couple like real examples that I have personally experienced for different things, just to give some context here, because everyone's situation is going to be a little different. So the first one is, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm currently building a podcast player in the sofa, and one of the things is you can have certain settings for podcasts that you have saved. So let's say that you want, when you complete a podcast, like you're done listening to it, you want it to go into the logbook automatically. Or say you don't want that, like you can change those settings. And I have like future ideas for other settings that I'll add and everything. So there's not that many right now. But one of them was around episode limits. And the idea was that you could set limits on the number of episodes that you kind of downloaded or kept at one time for a specific show. So let's say that for a news show, you only wanted to keep 3 episodes at one time, right? But say for another show, you wanted to keep 5 or 1 or whatever. This sounds really simple at first, but when I started to build this out and think through the various edge cases that can happen, there's a couple things where it's like, okay, let's say you have 3 episodes of a podcast and you're currently listening to one, and say there's a new 4th one. What do you do? Do you just get rid of one? Do you wait until you're finished listening to the other one to grab the new one? And I know there's going to be people who are listening to this right now and say, no, just do it like this. Just do it like this. I'm telling you, I have gotten multiple conflicting suggestions for what to do here. And the more I thought about it, the more it was just like, this is actually more confusing than it seems for such a simple setting. And I don't know if it's worth keeping. It may be something that I figure something out in the future, but I actually don't think I fully understand the problem that's solving deep enough. And so I'm like, well, I'm just not going to include this setting. So not include it, but I took it out of the beta, so it's gone. So this will never launch to the public, which is good. And this is one of the reasons I do betas, public betas, because it's like you just learn so much stuff. But that's one example where, I did implement it. It's in testing, and then after people using it and getting feedback, it's just too confusing. So And again, I don't think I understand the problem it's trying to solve well enough. So I feel like I need to talk to more people and get a deeper understanding of like, okay, what is the purpose of like setting the number of episodes? Like, what are you trying to do? So, so that's something that like may come back in a very different form, but I don't know. This next one is, so that's kind of like similar to a feature isn't working as expected, right? Now, the next one is around something is broken, and this is board games. So Sofa has a bunch of different data sources for, you can add stuff. So you can add books, movies, video games, podcasts, all that stuff. One of them that I have is board games, and I used a specific data source for that, and that data source just like went out of business. Like one day I was getting emails saying like, oh, board games aren't working. And when I did some digging, I did a whole post and video about this, so you can watch that. But essentially the service I was using just completely went out of business with no warning or anything like that. So that was something where like a feature was broken, and it was broken right away. And that was like infrastructure stuff. And so I had to hustle to get some kind of solution out. Luckily, I was able to get I reached out to the company and got a little bit of an extension for API access to start to transition people away from it just to keep their data. And that was very stressful and not fun at all. Like that was like a fire. But that triggered me to build in this like remote messaging system into Sofa, where if something like that were to happen again in the future, I can kind of push out a little message to people in the app to let them know like, hey, this is happening, something, here's where you can find more information, that kind of stuff. So it was, that was not fun at all. But, in the end, all good, because like all things considered, board games were not as popular as everything else, like, movies, video games, TV shows, that kind of stuff. But there was still a good chunk of people saving board games in Sofa. So, but that was something I had to remove that very quickly. So not fun. The last one, which is like the evolution of this is like a mix of like the evolution of the product and something not really working as expected. But this is around shared lists, and I'm like blanking on the dates. I feel like it was 2023, maybe 2022. But I built a feature into Sofa where you could have shared lists of whatever. So you could create a list with, your husband or wife, friend, whatever. And you could have shared movies to watch or TV shows to watch or whatever you wanted to put in there. And I had launched this as a beta feature because this was under the hood. It was like kind of a newer thing that Apple was providing, and even in testing, it was like 80% solid, but there was some very weird edge cases that were very difficult to work with and to work around and to debug and all that stuff. So I kind of launched it as a beta feature and hoped to improve it over time. And honestly, just the feature alone was so buggy, number one, that I was like, I gotta figure out how to fix this or just take it out. Number one, it was a giant pain. Just so many bugs. But then the thing that really pushed it over the edge to get rid of it was when I was working on Sofa 4.0, I was adding a lot of new features to that where you could add custom ingredients, custom categories, smart list, all these different things that were highly, like very powerful and provided a lot of customization to, someone's Sofa experience if that's what they wanted. But under the hood, that really didn't work well with shared lists. Like there was going to be a ton of kind of data collisions with stuff. And I know I could have worked out the under the hood stuff, but I think the experience for people would have ended up being pretty confusing, because you would have to know like, oh, well, I can do this if it's not a shared list, but if it is a shared list, I have to kind of like restrict a bunch of features when it came to ingredients or custom categories and all these different things. And that led me to like this fork in the road of, okay, what do I do? Like, do I keep this shared list feature, which many people asked for, and people still ask for, or do I evolve the product towards this not like a brand new direction, but just a more customizable direction that people weren't asking for specifically, but they were asking for in roundabout ways, where I felt like I understood the problems that people were bringing to me, and I was like, okay, I think these solutions that I am putting together make sense, and I ended up going with that, right? So I kind of built the new stuff, and I removed the shared list because it just didn't fit with the new direction of the product, and that was not an easy decision. Like I really tried to make that work quite a bit, and talked to a bunch of people to get feedback. Like, what if I get rid of this? What am I going to do? And I'm like, I launched Sofa 4.0 maybe like 8 months ago now, something like that, 8-9 months. I have no regrets removing shared lists. Like it was definitely the right direction. The new stuff I added has been very well received, and I think makes the product very unique and just better overall. And I learned a bunch of stuff in that process. I learned that like the shared part of Sofa, there is value in that, but the core Sofa experience, I think, is more of a single player experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. Yeah, so those are just some examples that I personally have gone through. Be curious to hear other people, what you've kind of dealt with and how you've kind of removed stuff. But like, yeah, removing stuff is just the nature of it when you do this kind of work. So last thing is, when you are removing stuff, there are a few things to be mindful of. So number one, have a clear understanding for why you're removing the feature, right? Like if someone says, why are you removing this feature? Like make sure you have a very clear understanding and that you can explain it. And that even if someone disagrees, they can at least say, okay, I understand why you're doing that, even though I don't want you to. And if you don't have a clear understanding, then like maybe don't remove it yet. Like work on your understanding of what's happening before you take action. The next one is communicating changes to users, because you really don't want to just remove stuff and then just like hope no one notices. Like that's kind of the worst, because when people find out, they're going to be pissed. Number one, right? Like that happened with shared lists for me. And what I was able to do is I had written a blog post. I had like support documentation. I had a video on YouTube about it. Like, and when people would reach out about it, like, hey, what happened to this thing? I would share those resources with them, and their tone softened up like immediately. Like it could be like, you know what? Like this sucks, but like, I get it. And that's where like communicate this stuff. Like don't be afraid to share bad news. That's bad news is going to happen with this. And what people want is just clarity and like, okay, well, what's going to happen? Like they want to understand what's going to happen. And as long as you provide the information, the clarity, and like you're as transparent as you can be, I think you'll be fine. You will get some negative stuff, but whatever, that's all fine. But yeah, don't hide the changes. Don't make promises you can't keep. So people said like with share lists, like, okay, but like, are you going to bring it back? I have no idea. Like, and I would say, I don't have any plans to do it right now, but maybe in the future. And that's the honest thing. Like, I don't make promises you can't keep just to like make someone feel better. Just be honest and you'll be fine. And the last thing is to expect negative feedback. Like you're going to get negative feedback, because even if one person used a feature that you're getting rid of, that's still one person who maybe really loved that feature and relied on it and whatever. So it's very easy when you're just looking at analytics to just say, only, 2% of the user base uses blah, blah, blah. But like within that 2% are real people, and they may love that thing that your product or your app does. And the fact that you're getting rid of it sucks. So, expect the negative feedback, listen to it for sure, because people may have great points. You may use that feedback in the future to maybe build something new or bring it back in some way, whatever. But don't take it personally, because, I should do actually, the whole don't take it personally thing, I feel like I should do a whole video on like developing thick skin with this stuff, because you gotta be able to take the negative stuff. Alrighty, so that's it, gang. Thanks for watching. I'd be interested if other people I guarantee other people have removed features from their app and how that went, good or bad. It's always fun to share stories. So, but anyway, thank you for watching. If you want to check out my work, there's a bunch of links in the description. You can see in my app Sofa. You can head to the App Store and get that. But thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.